All right, so welcome to another year of ultimate accountability. For those that don't know, since about 2018, I've done pretty much off-season game plans that go over Tennessee Titans, what they should do, who they should sign, and then I'll go over the draft at that time period. Usually it's around February or March, so draft boards are not set. Proclamations about players and boards and reports are not set in stone. So I'll share who I would have taken in these type of scenarios. I send my work to a good friend who goes over the analytics, who puts them through thousands of simulations, and it comes back with what is the likelihood of this roster winning the Super Bowl. And that he tries to take into account injury, tries to take into account a mean or aggregate amount of improvement throughout the year, and then gives a result. And over the course of what is about to be 8 years, well, this is the eighth year, over the course of 7 years, excuse me, I've been able to win three Super Bowls. So, specifically, two in a row. So, I'm aiming for kind of in the Chiefs territory when it comes to that. But really, what it's about creating a framework and a strategy on how the Tennessee Titans should move. And over the course of the past, like I said, 7 years, not always 100% right, but definitely in the direction of framework and strategy, I've been on par. And I don't think there's any greater or more drastic contrast than what the Tennessee Titans have actually done and what my rosters have been able to formulate, especially in the analytics world. And then if you just look at the players that I signed, they had successful years. I know a lot of detractors may say, "Oh, what are the likelihood of them doing it here or in that system?" I also have my own batch of coaches in certain situations that I would use. And obviously the teams have the medical information. The teams have the advantage of a lot more information than I don't. So there are some iterations and additions that I post in other areas. But I'm going to show you guys a Google document today of what I posted early in 2024 during the Tennessee Titans, off season and some of the stuff that I did. So I'm going to share my screen. So let's look at what occurred. Bear with me here. I'm gonna find it. I think this is the one. All right. So with that being said, and never mind the storage is full. We're gonna handle that when need be. But this is my seventh annual Tennessee Titans 2024 offseason game plan, where excellence is expected, and I provide difference. Proverbs 3, verse 6. Trust in the Lord, He will make your path straight and clear. So this was dropped on March 18th, 2024. I like to add a little, I don't know if you would call it humor more so than just, just having fun with what I'm doing. Call it a roster engineering MBA in terms of, doing this for 7 years in terms of this, series. But I've been evaluating for over a decade, really closer to 2 decades, and really passionate about this team. But let's get down to it. Now, you guys have the ability to read. I don't want to make this too lengthy, but I'll read the opening statement about this team, and let's remember where this team was at. So this team was just coming off of, the year where they just picked seven, and that's what I was about to say. The biggest contrast, this Tennessee Titans of me winning two Super Bowls and them picking number seven and number one in the same years that I analytically was able to win a Super Bowl. So coming off the season that they came off of, Vrabel being fired, needed a new direction. What direction should that be? Or yeah, what direction should that be? So the goal of this all season should be to assess the market at positions of need, then practically find players that fit your culture. Last year, the question was, should the Titans be trying to retool or rebuild? I said they should reestablish, meaning identity, what it means to be a Titan. This year is about rebooting every position, every limiting belief, every inefficient way of execution. So this is pretty much like an abstract, the intro to what I'm going to be talking about, some of the ideologies that I picked up on or what I want to share. A lot of stuff I don't share for competitive reasons, but view the free agency cycle before the draft. Um, Getting guys that you want to invest in long term during the last cycle was very important. You had better get your guys this offseason at quarterback, tight end, center, defensive tackle, safety, kicker, punter. Also, save your money and don't sign large wide receiver contracts because there's depths in the draft and volume in the years to come. If you must pay up, get yourself a few good corners, veteran corners. These are working off of predominantly Titan-centric evaluations, of course. So if you have enough draft capital, getting a rookie corner or two is fine. For this year, you shouldn't overcommit to replacement level talent during the first or second wave. I'll be very big on third and fourth wave roster pickups. I introduced something that a lot of teams use. I don't factually know that. I would assume, I would hope that they're using something that I call positional potency, and that's just basically being ahead of the curve, understanding, what player future acquisition opportunities are in the future for certain positions. Um, and people have to remember that free agency comes before the draft. Um, here's some of my grades of positional potency, basically saying, how do I view it roughly? How am I grading the position groups roughly, collectively, draft and free agency in a certain group, and then how do I view it in the next year? Some of these were just based off of who I think might have come out, who I think might have stayed. So a lot of underclassmen is going to change that obviously in real time, but this is just something that I introduced and wanted to share with people this year. Every year I try to add something new, and it was something that I call positional potency, which is just basically giving you an idea of your future acquisition opportunities at other positions and grading them. So PFF analytics were used in this project, and something I like to say is that yes, analytics are a part of the game and it's growing. I like to say that is an advantage. I mean, it it essentially it's made to make your job easier. But I also say that the other part of the advantage is that a lot of people use that as opposed to watching the tape, and they just become pretty much robots or just pretty much, puppets to the information as opposed to actually knowing, so know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like the concept of the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And I think that the people that know all these numbers, they're very knowledgeable. But the people who actually watch tape and combine it, these people are the people who are, who have wisdom because they know how to provide context. So, way I put it is PFF analytics and grades were used in this project to further describe a player's impact and execution. It's important to reiterate that analytics broadly tell the story, but momentum, pace, and emotion are the driving force. The important part of roster engineering is finding players who assist in administering those ebbs and flows. Emotional IQ and human nature still play a substantial role in my evaluations. So, in the preface of my evalu of my whole body of work here, I inform you of roughly how much numbers we have in free agency, how much cap space I created, and yes, how much I left over for the rest of the season to assign the draft class and stuff like that. But I also have guys that obviously you aren't always able to get these guys on your practice squad, but because I'm doing it before a lot of this stuff is finalized. But these are just players that before the season started, I would have loved the Titans to be able to acquire them. And one of the main things with me is accountability and no hindsight 2020. I'm not a hindsight 2020 guy when it comes to like well ever, right? Because my whole thing is eliminating hindsight 2020. It's about accountability. So these are just some of the guys that I would have wanted the Titans for as developmental players and practice squad addition. So as you can see, guys that really pop out that stood out this year was Patrick Taylor was able to get some tread, with the Niners this year. David Moore had a very surprise season with the Carolina Panthers. Steven Sims was the returner for the Texans. Justin School had a from what I believe to be a pretty good season with the Bucks. Um, Theo Benedict had been on the Bears for the majority of the year. Excuse me. Calvin Throckmorton was on the Titans. Played well last year. Was surprised he wasn't brought back. You have guys like Phil Haynes, Rasheem Green, Michael Walker, James Pierre, who's actually starting a little bit for the Steelers this year. We're getting extensive playing time. Um, And then we move on to the extensions and re-signings, possibly extending Amani Hooker, watch the market, re-sign Chestnut, running back as a special teamer. Chris Hubbard would have been good depth. Terrell Edmonds, good depth at safety. Kevon Wallace, these are guys that, were brought in, and I think they played well last year. And for a lot of Titans fans and for people that just don't know about this, memory your memory, uh, you're bound to forget, let's put it like that. And I think a lot of people forget that the contributions of Kevon Wallace and Edmonds was substantial last year, and they did well. Obviously signing Nick Folk, had an awesome season this year. Got hurt at the end. Morgan Cox, of course, and tenor Jack Gibbons, who stepped in this year. Releases Andre Dillard. It is of extreme importance and of note. Was not a big proponent in that signing, but the Titans gave him a pretty big contract. Running back Hassan Haskins, you know, uh, got rid of him. Had some pretty good tread with the Chargers. His college coach is coaching, so that makes sense. Possible cap conversions, Amani Hooker, trades. Now, disclaimer: both of these trades are facetious, and what I mean by that is, I didn't. There is no on this roster, or at the time, there wasn't really players that I thought could realistically be traded. But I was so frustrated with the usage of these two players, that I facetiously, which means I pretty much tongue in cheek, not jokingly, but for the sake of their careers, helping them, I said, in this game plan, I'm going to put that I'm going to trade them away. And obviously, this is what I was talking about as far as iterations. And in real time, the team obviously has the opportunity to see a player develop, or once, roster shakedowns, oh, we can keep three quarterbacks here, or we can do this, that, and the third. Obviously, I wouldn't have traded away Malik Willis. For those that know me, they know that I wouldn't really do it, right? I wouldn't really do it. It was a facetious, okay, you guys aren't going to use him. It was almost like the Titans were at the point to where I didn't think they were going to use him, but I would love to see him in this offense. So as you can see, trading him to the Ravens, get a late round pick, which he did garner a late round pick, but the Titans traded him to the Packers and doing right by Malik. Like for me, I either sign someone that can adapt to Malik Willis's skill set, right? I don't trade him away in like I'm doing it because I have no control of who's, running the show. I know that the Ravens will use him right. But if I literally am in the position, then I'm not trading Malik Willis away. I'm hiring people that's going to bring the best out of Malik, if that makes sense. Traylon Burks, I don't think he's been used quite the right way as well. I think there is some proponents to obviously feeling like you were forced to draft him, in my opinion, feeling like you were definitely forced to draft him. Not the best feeling in the world. I think he's much better using him down the field on go routes, and then intermediate on dig routes, and then less about the reverses, more about the screen game with him. And I don't think that has been used enough. They were basically using him as a clear out player to open stuff up for the guys underneath. Now, my free agent signings, gonna try to pick this up a little bit. Where are we at? Like minute, we're 10 minutes in. We haven't even got to the juicy stuff. So I'm gonna keep this thing going. But my free agent signings were these guys, and we'll get into deeper context about them. Just showing you right here. Free agent synopsis: first wave, second wave, third wave, and fourth wave. Just these are different times where you acquire the player. So first wave is obviously that first week of free agency, competitive offers, very time sensitive. Second wave a week or two after the first week of signings, serviceable depth. Third wave bargain backups ready for a training camp. Fourth wave veterans waiting on opportunity, usually after significant release time frames. Think post training camp. So with Mason Rudolph, my thought process with him was being very high on him coming out of the 2018 draft. Wanted him on the Titans for some time just because he's a solid backup. I mean, he has the ability to throw the ball down the field and be accurate, be able to run an offense, be able to play with pace. He's a quality backup, and that's what he is. And I said I dubbed this year the year of the quarterback. You really need to get a guy that can sustain the offense. And I think outside of, some unlucky gaffes, I think he played solid, definitely better than the other guy, right? And I think the other guy has can have a future once he limits the mistakes and you know doesn't play hero ball and definitely is patient with the football. But that's who I would have went with. But now knowing that there were other options as well, and I'm stated and it's documented of me um stating that. You know what I'm saying? My number one option, as I say down there, is Jacoby Brissett. Just as far as the free agency quarterbacks. But then when there's via trade, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Sam Howell. These are then I'm getting into more free agents. Definitely was in on the Justin Fields sweepstakes. And I really was in on you know, a a lot of people because they don't pay attention. Zach Wilson, a lot of people don't know because they don't pay attention. Zach Wilson actually had a pretty good preseason, and he looked like a different quarterback in that system with the Broncos. And I think that as the coming months go on, I think Zach Wilson will be a name that a lot of people will talk about in terms of legitimately being a guy. So especially with this draft class, it's almost like he's going to have to be a guy. And then Justin Fields, obviously, in his limited time with the Steelers, has done well. So I think that he's another name to consider to moving forward and as far as last year. So Gus Edwards was what I would consider a replacement stylistically still trying to retain that physicality. Already having Tajay Spears wanting to remain a physical team, being able to convert short yardage. Tony Pollard had an awesome year, as you can see. He's right after Derrick Henry. Now, realistically, I didn't think Derrick Henry would return, so that's why he's not, like a legitimate option. I didn't think he would want to return, but he's there nonetheless. I definitely would have tried to convince him. Tony Pollard is there. James Conner was, had a contract that he might have gotten released. Same with Kamara. Zach Moss, another heavy hitter. Antonio Gibson, that would have been monotonous with Tajay Spears, but still liked him. Ron, if released, and Alexander Madison. So Tennessee, if we're gonna say they did the best, probably the best signing that they did was Tony Pollard. So Noah Fent was another guy. And this is somewhat of positional potency. Um, not considering as much of what the 2025 tight end draft class will be. But at the same time, speaking specifically for the Titans, and sometimes I have the dance between that, speaking specifically for the Titans or for any team viewing this document, specifically for the Titans because of the lack of premium drafts picks. Picking a tight end in free agency prior to the draft, you can use a draft pick on the tight end, but the Titans need to get a guy, right? And last year I felt like they needed to get a solid guy opposite of Chig. And I think Noah Fant was that guy. I think he had a solid year, as good as it gets. In the Seahawks offense, there's a lot of mouths to feed. He would have been, higher in the pecking order here. And I know the offense with Callahan is this, but I wanted just from a perspective of trying to be able to do some of the things that I envisioned for this team, I wanted Todd Monken or Raheem Morris. So that's that offense that can be versatile there in Baltimore, or it's the coaching branch and tree of the Shanahans with Zach Robinson that Raheem Morris brought. So just wanted to get to an offense that could be what I like to call play style variance or have play style variance and ability to win in multiple ways with multiple personnel. And that's just kind of what it is. Hope you guys are reading yourself. Noah Brown, named prolifically or known prolifically for his Hail Mary catch from Jaden Daniels. This is going to be so much more longer than what I wanted it to be, but hopefully the real football lovers, you guys get it. Deontay Hardy, Mark Vrabel famously joked about getting him a returner, and I think I've done that tenfold for this team over the course of years, suggesting guys like Cavante Turpin or even this guy Deontay Hardy, just getting that guy. So my thing is, as you guys will see or find out about my live drafts. So my live drafts are very different than what I do here. As you can see, the date was what, March when I released this. So my live draft happened during the draft. So I'm going live as the Titans are picking for accountability reasons. And obviously the Titans took JC Latham, but I would have went towards more of a veteran market for the protection for this year just to be sure, right? I didn't want to use the excuse of a rookie lineman being too young or inexperienced. So I went after Cornelius Luke is a very underrated lineman that a lot of people have not been really looking at or peeping or anything like that. So definitely have been on him for a few years, and he's been good. Had Jermaine Illuminor there, had him last year. He had a stellar year, got paid by the Giants. Cameron Fleming was on practice squads, I believe, for the longest. Titans throughout the year never really like to me attempted to really bolster the line whatsoever, whether it be on practice squads, whether it be finding the right guys. It almost seemed like it was sabotage at some point. And I say that respectfully because I know these guys. Like the fan base, you can sign a guy and the fan base not know about the guy. But if you sign a guy, I'm more than likely going to know the guy because I've watched them before somewhere. And it just was a little less than satisfactory, if I'm being frank. I think there was a lot of guys the Titans could have kind of filtered. And then again, with practice squad guys, you have to actually want to go there. But there are some free agents that I think the plan, right? When we talk about having a plan, positional potency, how you like working through frameworks, right? If the Titans were like, okay, here's the draft, blah, 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 I'm going to take a 7 pick on JC Latham. Okay, this should have been thought about, November, December. Okay, what does the free agency group look like? We have to use the free agency, that window of acquisition to get veteran guys. Okay, that gives us so much more freedom in the draft. We don't have to use a premium position on JC Latham. Like, yes, Cornelius Lucas probably has 2 or 3 good years left in him. Tops. Guys like Illuminor, 2 or 3 good ones, or Chris Hubbard 1 year, or whatever you want to say. How much ever these guys have left. Um, Mekhi Becton was a guy. If incentive lace deal, Kendall Lamb, David Sharp. Uh, you know, you have to look at it like you can't have the I guess superhero savior fairy tale viewpoint of we're drafting JC Latham and then tag him as a 10-year starter. I don't use 10-year starter. I don't use the word generational because at the end of the day, on average, the mean is that you're gonna have these players for 3 or 4 years. This is the average NFL career. So if you can get a veteran and get veteran quality, veteran play, it's not a sexy pick. Cornelius Lucas, nobody knows him but me. It's not a sexy pick, but he's a quality lineman that has 2 or 3 good years left in him. Maybe Latham plays 2 or 3 good years, or he could be a Hall of Famer. Who knows? But that's why you're able to move year by year and have a plan and strategy. So that's where the protection was this year. The Titans just didn't do it. So center Lord Cushenberry the third, we were in lockstep with that. Obviously, they um, signed Cushenberry as well, or wanted to sign him. I think that it is a huge signing. It's unfortunate he got hurt. Um, it kind of is what it is. He didn't have that as far as a marker, or it wasn't a red flag about him. It was just, I think, a freak injury. But he should be back according to reports. Um, a little bit before training camp or after. And other centers like Andre James, Connor Jones, Evan Brown is someone that I targeted last year. Michael Dieter, that should say Michael. I don't know who's hopping in my Google Docs and editing stuff. But yeah, that should be seriously, it should be Michael Dieter, who played decently for the Commanders this year. There goes shout out Adam Peters on that one. Eric Armstead, who had a huge mega monster year. A lot of people were scared away. Um, he's a legitimate pass rusher. He was in the ranks of Chris Jones, and everybody knows Chris Jones is defensive lineman for the Chiefs statistically for legitimate and quality rush. As an interior lineman, I think the Jaguars used him at end a little bit too much, and he's best on the inside. I may be flipping that, but he's definitely better on the inside. Titans had him at end. I mean, not Titans, Jaguars. Other guys that I looked at were signing Denico Archery and granted, listen, the stories about acquiring these players, right? The Titans. Remember, they went after Ridley and they traded or they traded for L'Jarius Sneed. They signed Chidobe Awuzie. So all that money was going to them. Whereas for me, I'm dispersing the money with bargain bin. Well, Armstead cost a grip, but I'm spreading the money and the wealth to quality players as opposed to targeting two or three high spenders based off of their name or their possible projections. Now, since we're on that subject, I wouldn't have touched Chidobe Awuzie because of his injury history, right? Wouldn't have traded for L'Jarius Sneed because of injury history. Now, were they on my list? Yeah, but further down. Calvin Ridley. Wouldn't have signed him because I felt like this receiving class was solid, right? And I can supplement this. Am I getting Jamar Chase? Am I getting Justin Jefferson? Justin Jefferson. Am I getting Tyreek Hill? Calvin Ridley is a good receiver, but there were obviously a difference in quality here in terms of putting that much money and investment toward. So that allowed me to get to more players, more quality players. Speaking of quality players, Frankie Louvu, shout out Adam Peters once again from the GM for the Commanders, one of my favorite evaluators in the league. We were in lockstep. Frankie Louvu had an outstanding career. Well, it's not over, hopefully. He had an outstanding year this year. And he doubles as a edge rusher and a linebacker. Those are two positions that the Titans struggle with. So my ability to get to Frankie Louvu would have paid dividends for this team. Willie Gay Jr., another supplemental guy that could have played better, but better than the Titans options this year. DJ Reader played comparable to who the Titans drafted in Sweat. So when we talk about what are we doing here, big player, Tavondre Sweat is a dude, right? Character issues coming out. We don't know about that. But once again, not getting too attached to the imagery. I think the imagery of the Titans drafting in the trenches was great. But I just flipped it. I just chose to go trenches free agency, skill set players in the draft. They chose trenches draft, skill set players in free agency, but with risky players. So I went with DJ Reader, and he had a comparable season. He got a little nicked up at the end. Better pass rusher than run defense this year. And then Tavondre Sweat was definitely better versus the run rather than pass, but such is whatever, such is the situation. Um, Derek Barnett, huge year, actually had a touchdown versus the Titans, huge mega year, and was signed for relatively low money. Absolutely outstanding career. Titans struggled with pass rush this year. I also had Chase Young on there, red flag with injury, but one of the risks. He had a good year, would have been way more expensive than Barnett, though. Uh, Van Ginkel had a big year. Dorrance Armstrong, another Adam Peters guy. He went with it, but Dorrance Armstrong wanted more money, and he was deserving of it. A very underrated player. that was signed by the Commanders. And that's what happens when you got people. He to bet on Dorrance Armstrong should deserve you definitely deserve more credit for that hit for sure because he was a guy, but he was the type of guy that you thought you were gonna sneak and get him for low. And whoever's Dorrance Armstrong's agent is knew what it was, and good for him. Uh Kendall Fuller is a guy that, like I said, when I'm looking at my free agents and I'm assessing it, I'm like, okay, if I can get Kendall Fuller, I don't have to get L'Jarius Sneed. As you can see, he is an option. I'm not saying that it wasn't an option. I'm just saying that it would have what it's not my first option, you know. And then further down the line, Chidobe Awuzie is there, which should be an A. Um, Stephon Gilmore is there. Jeff Okuda is there. Kenny Moore is there. You'd be stealing from a divisional opponent if that was the case. Uh, Cornerback Ronald Darby has history with defensive coordinator Denard Wilson. I think he was up and down this year, but overall, a solid player. I still would choose my two over who the Titans eventually selected. They did get a real good steal in Daryl Baker Jr. That was really solid of them. Other options. Michael Jackson has always been an underrated player. Um, you know, uh, Javier Thomas underrated, more of a special teamer now. Um, Nick McLeod always been underrated. So cornerback market was what it was, but I thought the Titans could have gotten some more frugal options. Safety, Justin Simmons, that was the wait around. Titans chose to go with Quandre Diggs. As you can see, Quandre Diggs isn't on. He would be the next player after Brandon Jones, um, or he should be in the mix somewhere there. But after Brandon Jones, just was a size thing for me. I already think Amani Hooker is 5'11", 200-ish, whatever he is. Getting another guy that's sub 6 foot, I really just wanted to get a bigger, rangier type of guy. And Justin Simmons had a decent year with the Falcons, with that tandem with Jesse Bates. Deshaun Elliott is will always probably be on my safety list. Just an outstanding player in the box. Um, C.J. Gardner Johnson was on there. Obviously, Geno Stone, Cameron Curl, Kevin Byard. Obviously, probably less likely to bring him back. I didn't necessarily agree with him leaving in the first place, but it is what it is. Um, Mike Edwards actually was on here for a drink of coffee and then got released. Trade synopsis. So this kind of confirms what I was talking about earlier. So Chargers are also an option here. Talking about the trade from trading away Malik. So the Titans took Malik Willis with the 86th pick of the 2022 draft when he was talked up to be a top 20 selection. He was thought to be a project then and still is in some ways. After a failure from the coaching staff to adapt to his skill set or even come up with a competent package, Willis is left underdeveloped. Not much effort was put forth to use a unique skill set in order to ignite an otherwise stale offense. He clearly struggled in the traditional scheme that the Titans ran. The 2023 preseason was a breakthrough, but didn't have enough reps as the QB2 for the rest of the season, even after QB1 Ryan Tannehill got injured. A fresh start in a scheme that highlights his strengths would be ideal. He needs to be able to put his athleticism on display and have an organization that buys into his development. The Titans were in a tough spot. The previous coaching regime was in win down mode when an organization they needed to review where they were as an organization they needed to review where they truly wanted to go. A lot of solid young players were caught in that mess. And I speak about Greg Roman possibly being with the Chargers or him being with Greg Roman, that fit. And I talked about how much sense it would make for the Ravens and then talked about how the Titans pick. So as you can see with the tone of the expression, this is not something I really would do. It's something that facetiously doing it because the Titans wasn't getting it, if that makes sense. Traylon Burks, so the logic here was possibly even the Jets. Um, I said it was a forced pick because the previous front office didn't want to pay a top five wide receiver in the league. And listen, all of this stuff is just being frank. If you are a franchise that can't take criticism or this type of delivery, then I'm not even sure I want to work with you because this is the type of transparency that's needed in order to win, right? And I'll say this until the cows come home. Like I'm not in the business of trying to attain power or looking at the perception of power or the superficial look, right? The aesthetic. I'm not for always the aesthetic. I like a good picture, a good scenery, a good painting, but I'm not trying to look a certain type of way. I'm in the business of winning, right? And we have to be able to take criticism, especially from people who know what they're talking about, so that you can win. The whole thing, you're building a new stadium. The whole thing, the whole reason of that is you want to be able to create a good product for the fans to watch. They are the heart of the team. They are the heart of the organization because they not only is it their pockets that fund it, but it's their spirit and their energy and their the essentially the noise they create that assists the team, right? So it's about winning. It's not about what it looks like or how it sounds. You know, I mean, I shouldn't have to say that, um, so Tennessee needed to replace somebody. We collectively thought that he might be a AJ Brown replacement. In reality, he was a big slot, right? Gadget receiver, where he was never really returned to as far as being a gadget kind of guy. A lot is talked about how Vrabel's offenses went, but he had his best year under Vrabel, and he was used down the field, used as a dig player, running digs, and then used as that gadget guy, getting reverses and stuff like that. So the Jets make sense, and Cowboys made sense, and just trying to piece that together. But facetiously trading away those guys. So I always do roster dissertation and an overview. So that season was 6-11, around the middle of the pack of difficulty. Longest win streak was one, only winning one game, and then longest losing streak was three. Most impressive win was the comeback win at Miami. Most disappointing loss was week, 13 versus the Colts, 31-28, where they seemed like they had the game in order, um, and then things occurred. So some of the strengths that they had was young guys stepped up and played well. This team chose to run it back when they could have been in sell mode. So definitely they chose to run it back. I would have been in sell mode. It was a combination of poor roster engineering and sheer lack of ingenuity. But yeah, the strengths was they stepped up and played well. Some of the young guys, longtime vets, had their farewell. They may have found their QB. As you can see, I have their QB um, in bold. My quality control special projects over the years. These are just over the years of players that I would have specifically drafted for the Titans with their allotted pick. Now, in these drafts, of course, there were players that I liked better, more, but part of what I bring to the table is my ability to, okay, say, this is it. This is the type of picks that we have. This is who would have been available. And these are just some of the players that I would have brought in that over the course of years. It may be something to you. I got a Super Bowl MVP on here. I have a few future Hall of Famers in my opinion. If you view Russell Wilson as a Hall of Famer, if you view Chris Johnson as a Hall of Famer, maybe fringe. Um, I have radio host on here now, Ramon Foster, have Des Bryant on here, who, him and Megatron are the only two receivers I think have ever been like, double team gunner style, um, in a game before. Uh, Leonard Williams, Stephon Diggs, like the royal flush of 2015. That's what I call it when I just went on an astronomical run. 2016, agreeing with Jack Conklin, Christian McCaffrey, and Tre'Davious White in the first round in 2017. Moneyball plays in 2018, targeting Demario Davis at free agency, which is still a top five linebacker currently. Well, last year he was. I think he regressed a little bit this year. But to have the flexibility to draft wide receiver DJ Moore, who I believe is probably at his best, top 10 receiver, but I say top 15 receiver in the league. Um, 2019 was my first year going live, like live while the Titans drafted. and that's where my accountability is. And that was the so much of about that year. I'm not making an excuse. Was first for me. While the draft was in Tennessee, so while the picks are going, I'm trying to make picks. I don't have my nothing in front of me in terms of who to pick, and not a great live draft, but an excellent value draft. I knew who was going to be who. I just, but if you follow my board, it's a much better draft. If I literally follow my board of BPA, it's a much better draft. Still, if you compare with what the Titans did excellent. They hit it at the park. Very similar, not far off from what I would do. Only thing would be in my 2019 game plan, I had them taking, or I would have taken AJ Brown in the first round. Um, but in this scenario, I think I I would have taken Jeff Sweat based off of my board. And then in the second round, some reason I pivoted off of AJ to get to Metcalf. Metcalf kind of was a riser, and I got to Metcalf. But yeah, it was a this year to me triggered so much of my growth and development that was so much needed. I love this year so much, even though that, whatever happened. So 2000, that was a strange year because I also tagged position coaches and did a, you know, people know about the Tennessee Titans run for the 2020 playoffs, whether it be the Tebow Henry touchdown pass to Corey Davis or the touchdown pass to Dennis Kelly in the 2020 playoffs. I tagged position coaches and the OC, no, not the OC, and the quarterback coach and tight end coach, Todd Downing and uh, Pat O'Hara about these specific types of plays before the games, that week of the game. And these guys, the team did it the next game, they did it. So I tagged before the Ravens game, I tagged coaches saying it would be cool to have a passing touchdown um from the King Cat. They hadn't tried it yet, I don't think, all year. Had they thrown a running back pass? Yes, but it was not out of King Cat, I believe. They did it in the playoff game. Crazy type of situation. Then they go to the Chiefs, right? They play the Chiefs, and before that game, I say it would be cool to have an offensive lineman touchdown using this play. So I have video examples, tagging position coaches. They run it the very next game. So of course, when I'm sharing this on social media, they're thinking I'm some type of crazy person or whatever, but it's legitimacy to it. If you were to realistically ask these people if they were being genuine, they would tell you that I'm not saying, I'm just saying it can be inspiration. It can be a reminder that, yo, that was a pretty good idea. And it's not crazy to think because these people have been on my lives. It used to be you could track who you could see who was on your live on X, and Pat O'Hara would be in my lives watching my videos. So it's not that crazy to think. And the people, it's because of how people think. They think it's some type of like illusion or they treat these people like gods, like unable to ever be on their level. And it's just not the truth. 2021 took Elijah Moore in the first round. If you compare that to what the Titans actually did, that's a net positive. And that's what you want to do in drafts is have a net positive. Obviously, you would have wanted, whoever the best player was in the first round, but that's who I was able to get to, and it's a net positive. Titans spent a combined 55 million on Vic Beasley, Jadeveon Clowney, and Bud Dupree, and got 7 sacks in return. During that offseason, I targeted Robert Quinn, Marcus Golden, and Al Qaeda Muhammad, and all for under 40 million. And they got 36 sacks in the same time span. So I would have saved the Titans roughly close to 20 million and would have gotten them 29 more sacks. So 2022, I think it's one of my underrated drafts. Obviously, live as I'm going live, I'm looking at the ticker and seeing the Titans trading away AJ Brown. So instinctively you're thinking, okay, AJ is gone. You need to replace that. So of course I went with Traylon Burks. But if you grant me, if you grant me this pardon, if you will, my next guy was center or interior lineman Tyler Lindenbaum, who is a Pro Bowler this year, if you believe in Pro Bowls. And that's would have been my guy. But let's just, for hardcore accountability, Traylon Burks. But outside of Traylon Burks, obviously Malik Willis is a quality quarterback too. Defensive tackle Travis Jones is a quality starter. Safety Nick Cross. So let's do this. Malik Willis is with the Packers, obviously. Defensive tackle Travis Jones is a quality starter for the Ravens. Safety Nick Cross is a quality starter for the Colts. Offensive tackle Kevin Deesh is out of the league and was undrafted. However, I was this close to pivoting to Braxton Jones, who has been a starter for the Bears. It happens. He actually was signed by the Titans later in the process. You don't go, you're not nobody's 100% in this league. Jalen Naylor is a quality wide receiver three for the Vikings right now. Monteric Brown is a quality starter for the Jaguars. And if you want to say average starter, that's fine with you. I mean, he was a late round pick for me. So if he's an average starter, I win. Net positives. Remember, wide receiver Derek Brown is from the reports that I see and the tape that I've seen, he's a solid uh gunner for the Seahawks right now. That's something that Titans needed this year. And running back Zonovan Bam Knight had a really good rookie season and got all the way up to running back two in his rookie season, got hurt, and he's currently on roster as a running back three, running back four, still a decent provider for a team, contributor, I should say, for a team. So that 2023 year, went live, went with JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, had an awesome year this year. He had 96 catches, almost 100 catches, should have been a Pro Bowl player, should be an alternate. Went with Mingo in the second round, obviously hasn't panned out, hasn't had the best quarterback play yet. I still believe in him. I think that you put him in the offense with the Chiefs, you put him in the offense with the Rams, he could do a lot when you intentionally target him, like Rashee Rice, for example, is being targeted, or even like Puka Nakua, how he's being targeted, like intentionally targeted. He hasn't been invested in that way. Had some pretty poor quarterback play. We're talking about rookie Bryce Young, and then we're talking about Cooper Rush, respectfully for those players, but just not the quarterback play that's needed for or systems that's needed for a guy like him. But he got another 1 or 2 years to prove it. If not, I was wrong. So we got running back Devon Achane. Um, I mean, need I say more? I mean, the guy's one of the fastest players in the league, incredibly productive, incredibly efficient. Definitely more efficient last year than this year, especially in the run game. But people were talking about his durability, was able to play, I believe, every game this year. If not, maybe one. Jordan McFadden and Luke Whippler are quality interior offensive linemen on teams right now. Safety Trey Dean is on practice squads, and one of those players that's very similar to who the Titans took recently in James Williams. So, I mean, where are we at? Almost at an hour here. Oh yeah, these are the draft picks that I did. I always like to go back to just see where, there's this is some of the thinking and thoughts behind some of the practice squad players. I also had Tanner Mordecai on here, just seeing, a late round guy that I would have liked. Uh, yeah. And then I would have went with Malik Neighbors, knowing what I knew in March, just based off of that limited knowledge, that's who I would have went with in the first round. Neighbors had a record-setting year, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely the best wide receiver in the draft, and he was my wide receiver one, and I would have taken him even over Marvin Harrison Jr. Javon Foster, definitely a misread, or overdraft here. But that's what the information that I had. I also have other options like Edgerrin Cooper, Peyton Wilson, Tavondre Sweat, Okororo, um, Troy Franklin, Mason McCormick. So just it's always interesting to go back to see in March and February where my thinking was at with certain prospects. Ray Davis, one of my favorite runners in the draft, and when he had opportunity this year, he's been stellar. Other guys, Tyrone Tracy Jr., you could say because he had the opportunity, he had a better year. Um, Bo Braid, Tyler Davis. I mean, Bo Braid had a definitely an underrated year. I think he went undrafted, but he played like he could have been picked in this range. Taj Washington, I think I talk about this about where the Titans selected, Jaquan Jackson and where the Dolphins selected Malik Washington. I think that if Taj Washington stayed healthy, he would have been better than both those players. But he got hurt during before training camp or in that training camp range. And I truly just believe he's just better. He's a better wide receiver. Now I think that Malik Washington is a better all around football player because he can return. He's physical. Heck, I think he could play running back if he wanted to. Just a physical, all around better football player. But I think the better receiver was Taj Washington. And hopefully he can return back 100% and even more from his injury and really put up numbers in that Dolphins offense, whoever, may be the head coach or offensive coordinator. I think they'll be back. I think Mike McDaniel will be back. And so we'll see. So Delmar Glaze was a guy that got some tread this year with the Raiders. Other people options during there was, other running backs like Kendall Milton, big back, big running back. Um, Guard Brandon Coleman, who had a good year. If I'm thinking about the same players in Washington, Eric all had a good year before he got hurt. Last few picks, Ryan Flournoy, big kind of receiver. I think he has a big frame. Can work with that and a good kid. Tatum Bethune, this last pick or last few picks, Tarheeb still one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And I definitely think he was picked higher than this. So early in the process, he was, ranked a little lower. People didn't know about him. He definitely rose a little bit more in at least the media spectrum of drafts. I saw an awesome player. Chargers saw an awesome player, and he's been stellar. Um, Khalid Duke is somebody that's on the Titans. He was undrafted. Um, Developmental edge prospect. I think the Titans saw something in him. I think he gets bigger, stronger, flexible. Like I said, he should be a special teamer to start and develop, and then hopefully develop a good pass rush plan and pass rush skill set. Um, and then you have, other options there, Tanner Mordecai, Emory Jones, just quarterback options you would have late in the draft. And then eventually Jason Bean, who had an awesome preseason, excellent athlete, um, mega athlete, and played well in the preseason for the Colts. And then you got Popo Amave, who saw him a lot during the summer, um, watching tape on him post me liking him, and then I did obviously during the draft process because I had other things I had to do that involved that Oregon defense. But I saw him a lot. Just a guy that was a game changer. I think he is undersized. He has to get stronger, get a little older in age too, but has to get stronger and heal from those injuries that he had during his rookie year. But definitely think he reminded me of a young Jarrell Casey. Obviously, other guys that were there, as you can see, John Meta, who had a decent underrated year. So you look at the draft class, that's what I would have done before going live, obviously in April, like I do, before a lot of information. And this is a draft where, obviously players can get picked. So I use this time, obviously, with the information that I have. Early February, March, when I'm writing this, that's the information that I have. So that's what I use. My other draft, which included Roma Dunze, Cooper DeJean, got back to Javon Foster. Christian Jones doubled up on tackle because I knew that we needed that right side to be fixed. So I doubled up my fiduciary duty to make sure that right side was um, fixed. And then I got to Taj Washington and Brevin Spanford, who had a quality year as a reserve tight end. And then I got to a undrafted free agent that is doing he's doing well. He did well in that in the CFL game that I saw. Isaiah Wooden Sr. Out of Southern Utah, who's a speedster, kind of a gadget guy, just a guy that you take a chance on that had not quite Cavante Turpin speed, but just wanted to give it a swing, because we need a returner. So at that late round, I'd much rather, I can find a special teamer that's a veteran and free agent that gets cut, tomorrow. But taking a chance on a guy that could be the next Cavante Turpin or somebody solid, just went ahead and took a gamble on Isaiah Wooden Sr. So as we conclude this, coming up on an hour, didn't think it's double the time of last year, but I had a little bit more to say this time. So the forecast was just in turn, I talk about the forecast and just the state of things, kind of like a state of the union. And then the summary of it all. So this season should be approached with a frugal approach to positional spending and paying up for high-end impact players. Titans did that too with their opinion. That's why Titans could say this. They could echo, any team could echo the same thing that I'm echoing. It's about how you actually execute the strategy. So paying up for Snead and Awuzie and Ridley, that was their example. My examples were Luvu and Armstead and guys like that. So it's just about how you do it. It's about mindset is one thing, execution is another. Culture will be vital with the new coaching staff. It will be imperative that there is buy-in at some point. Veteran players can assist in that. Changing personality types and expectations can be a process, but most importantly, you have to be aware of who you bring in to administer the way. From a culture perspective, there could be mixed results based on MO, modus operandum, and from a play style perspective. Leaning too much on data or pass happy tendencies could cause problems. But overall, this is a much needed growth process for all parties that will lead to the inevitable adaptation or extinction. I've made this team as competitive as I could while building a foundation that aligns philosophically with what I believe wins in this league. And that's the playstyle variance. That's with playstyle variance on offense and discipline chaos on defense. And this is just my information. If you need to reach me, some of the stuff that I've done in the past in the football world and then just working world, everything that I do, the world is my oyster, and it all ties back to evaluation, and I apply it in some way. Um, Here's some of my drafts. So 2019, 2009 draft. The people who have lived to see this, you remember some of these names. So I'll try to go slow for you. So this is accountability. So a lot of people will create big boards and say, "Oh, I think the top 25 players in the draft will be good." Well, yeah, that's the whole point. If you rank them top 25, they're supposed to be good. Now, with this, what this does is it creates of accountability because a team is only given a certain allotted amount of picks. So a lot of players that you want have already been taken. So who do you take when those players are gone? So this is what I was talking about earlier with the 2019 draft. This is who I took live while I'm with my family at the draft. Jerry Tillery, like I couldn't have done worse, right? These players on the left. But this is the player, if I'm following my board, which I usually will do, Jeffrey Simmons. That was my second ranked defensive tackle after Quentin Williams was taken. DK Metcalf was my wide receiver one. Uh, Michael Dieter, who's a starter now, uh, was my next up in value and need for the Titans. Amani Hooker was right on par with my value and need. I did eventually get to DeAndre Walker, which we shared that massive um, disappointment. And then I I'm standing by this pick, which I had originally. It's my best pick. He's the Pro Bowler. He's my last pick. And then TJ Edwards was someone that in terms of value, I would have picked. So now the reality of it is this a practice and an exercise of accountability, yes. But if you project this type of thought process on a team where we're sharing vision and we're trying to execute it as a team, obviously in this draft, J Rob didn't need much help. But when we talk about undrafted free agents, there you go. There's your Pro Bowl returner. If we're talking about later in the rounds and it's choosing between, DeAndre Walker and TJ Edwards, maybe I say, hey, TJ Edwards is the guy. So you make it an even more epic draft that you had. So that's just something that bring to the table. 2020 draft, and I got this in asterisks as well because it teaches me because I was heavily influenced with this name and God rest his soul, but this is who I am documented really wanting. I was admittedly influenced by some of the people. And this is when people talk about, oh, you're in your own echo chamber and stuff like that. No, this is 2019 through 2022-ish, but definitely 19 through 21. Totally experimental. I'm trying to learn different ways, different things to do different things. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should listen to others a little bit more. And I lean towards need instead of just a player, right? That's who I would have taken. But outside of that, got Antonio Gibson, who at for a while there looked like the next best dual threat running back in the league. Then we got John Simpson, who was a starter with the Jets. Then we got a miss with Steven Montez. Then we got another miss with Kalaja Lipskin and another miss here. So it happens in drafts. And I want people to know the drafts from 2020, and it's not just because there's misses here, right? It's not just because of that. It's because they literally wasn't that great of drafts. And I want people to know not only did the Titans have bad drafts in real time, like I have better net positives than the Titans, sure. But I want people to know that for almost every team, if you go back and look at their drafts, it just wasn't a great draft. The 2021. For some teams, 22, I feel like mine is doing well now, but definitely 20 and 21, it was tough, tough sledding. So with these guys, Elijah Moore, Elijah Molden, these are net positives. Brevin Jordan was a starter before he got hurt. That's a net positive. Dixon is a no. Hill is a no. Forsyth is an okay starter, probably a slightly below average. Now this David Moore story is really bad. David Moore out of Grambling State had the choice between him or Trey Smith. Pro Bowl right guard, Trey Smith. These are lessons. No other evaluator has this, like what people will say, an amateur or whatever, anybody that's not on the team. Every evaluator that you'll see, they'll give you a fancy chart. They'll tell you who's who. They'll give you video cut-ups, but they don't have a mental Rolodex of decisions in real time. In real time, I'm sweating looking at my chart. I have David Moore ranked higher at a position, but I have uh was Trey Smith my best remaining guard? I don't know, but I went off of David Moore's ability because I never saw him lose a rep. Even when he got upgraded in the Senior Bowl, I didn't see many losses. I honestly to this day don't know why I didn't take Trey Smith. Right? I'm thinking this is an SEC guard. Yeah, there were some character things way back when. I just to me, I feel like it was just one of those situations. But the fact of the matter is this is a separation. Realistically, Titans didn't have a great 2021 draft. But realistically, if I'm having these conversations, maybe there's somebody I trust that say, hey man, David Moore has this. They give me more information on David Moore. And then I'm like, okay, boom, let's go Trey Smith. Titans could have had Trey Smith. Like a lot of fans loved Amon-Ross St. Brown. They talk about it all the time. Oh, we could have had him instead of whoever they drafted. I know who they drafted, but I'm not going to say his name. I don't have to. Um, but the fact of the matter is, right, that could have happened as well. Could have been Amon-Ross St. Brown. So uh it just is what it is, man. And then 2022, I talked about that. Notable misses that I always remember, and I include these just because different times in my life. I just remember being wrong. And then in Jalen Mills, I mean, I've had that because it reminds me of the mindset of where I need to be when I'm talking about players. So these people missed for particular different reasons. The real people know Chris Bonner is. A lot of people don't even know who Chris Bonner is. But they remind me personally of the correct way to kind of recalibrate myself to be on track. Notable hits. I've talked about my hits. I don't have to, and this is just talking about in collective drafts more so than who I would have taken. And you guys can pause and read and do what you need to do with that. Just players I get liked, and then God bless. Thanks for reading. So we're in over an hour. Didn't really want it to be that long. But when you love it, you just keep talking. And hopefully you guys digest that. The real football lovers will digest it. For those that need to play it on 1.5 or 2.0, hopefully I'm enunciating good enough. I definitely am somewhat under the weather. I don't know if I am. Like I got a stuffy nose, but hope all is well. Thanks for tuning in. And that was your 2024 offseason game plan by Charles Barnes.